And I would say, well, there are optimal sized, we have optimal sized adversaries. And I don't think you can live without an optimal sized adversary, which is also an interesting, it's a very interesting idea, because one of the things that people always ask, this is a very metaphysical discussion, is why there has to be evil and horror in the world. It's like, well, it's not clear to me that the world could be constituted in the manner that it's constituted in any acceptable way if there were no adversaries. It's like, well, maybe the snake in the garden is necessary. Maybe that imperfection, and also that adversary is necessary. It's the thing that spurs on development. What would there be without an adversary? Maybe nothing. Because I can give you an example. It's a funny example. There's this little animal whose name I cannot remember, unfortunately, but it lives in the ocean. And in its larval stage, it has a brain, and it swims around. It's a little tiny thing. It swims around, like a little plankton and so on. And then at some point during its development, it fastens itself onto a rock, and it grows into something that sort of looks like a plant, But it's stable. It never moves again. So as it develops into this stable, rock-clinging entity, it basically digests its own brain, and then it doesn't need one after that. And the reason it doesn't need one is, well, there isn't really anything for it to do. It just sits there and filters water and takes, like a sponge sort of, it takes the nutrients out of the water, and the brain is just like it's extra energy using tissue, and so it doesn't need the brain anymore. And so, it's like, you don't need to think if you haven't got an adversary. So then you think, well, are there optimal sized adversaries? And part of the little motif of that story is, if you pay careful attention to things as they change, maybe you can keep the damn adversaries optimized. And I think that actually, it may not be true, but it's possible that it's true. And that's something, that's something. If you really pay, because the question might be, and this is something that I thought about when I was developing all of these ideas a long time ago, it's like, okay, well, there's obviously some things about existence that aren't exactly the way you might lay them out if you had the choice. Like the fact that people are fundamentally vulnerable, and that you're imperfect in 50 different ways, and that life is full of suffering, and everybody dies, and all these things that are existential nightmares. It's like, okay, fine. It's easy to judge that as unacceptable, and maybe even worse than unacceptable. Intolerable, deserving of obliteration. You can even go that far, and people do go that far. But there's another question that question begs, which is, yeah, maybe. But maybe if you brought all of your resources to bear on the problem, without holding back, all of them, then that would be okay, then you could master it. And that's possible, So you won't, the thing is, you'll never know unless you try it. That's the thing, because it's actually a claim that requires an existential proof. You can't listen to someone tell you that, and even if it's true for them, that doesn't necessarily mean it would be true for you. The only way you can test a proposition like that is existentially. You have to act it out. But as I mentioned earlier, I see very, very few truly optimistic ideas in profound thought. Most profound ideas are pretty damn pessimistic. But this is one I think that's an exception to that, which is, it is possible that you're constituted so that you have enough resources to deal with reality as it actually lays itself out.